I would like to look at Carlsen against Giri. This was a pulsating game. There were so many twists and turns. It was fascinating watching this game today. Sometimes I thought White was better. Sometimes Giri seemed to get the advantage. It was brilliant. Let's have a look at this. So, the game started as a King's Indian. And now instead of one of the main variations with e4, Carlsen played bishop g5 and now e3. This is the so-called Smyslov variation. This was popular in the 1950s and 1960s. Very positional. I think this was a very good choice by Carlsen. If you'll notice the game Giri against Nakamura from a couple of rounds ago, where Nakamura played an old system in the Dragon, a system that was also popular in the 1950s and 1960s, and Giri didn't know how to meet it. Clearly this was old theory that a kid like him, he hadn't got around to studying it yet. And I think Carlsen is playing the same kind of thing with this system, playing the same kind of game. He's avoiding a lot of current theory, avoiding preparation, and just wants to play chess. And we had a great game. Okay, what's the point of the Smyslov system? Well, the idea is White plays in a very different way to normal King's Indian. Maria Hilf says Vlado Kovacevic won many nice games with this system. That's true, he did, but of course Smyslov was the man who popularised this system. The idea is that you play your queen to c2. You don't have this big space advantage with d5. But for example, you try to expand on the queen side, or one idea is to play your knight into d6. It's very positional indeed. Okay, so let's have a look at what happened. The bishop was pushed back. So Giri is playing in a very uncompromising way because he's just looking to swipe the two bishops. So White can't do anything about this but forces the exchange. Now, of course, this is a trade-off. Black has the two bishops, and this is a wonderful bishop, as we'll see right to the very end of the game. But it's a compromise because Black has compromised his king side to a certain extent. And this is really the theme of the game. If Black can settle in his position and somehow consolidate his king side and prevent White's king side play, then Black will stand better because of this extra bishop. So e6, good move. You have to make sure that your pieces connect with the king side. Likewise, queen e7 seems normal. Okay, development, right, well, at some point, Black, if the king goes queen side, you might like to break open lines with b5. f4. Just let me pick up on a comment here. Brocken Arrow 5 says Carlsen still has the Kasparov CBH file. I suppose that's a reference to the preparation that Magnus Carlsen has done in the past with Garry Kasparov. Well, I am very confident that the Smyslov variation was not studied in the sessions between Kasparov and Carlsen. This is just a game of chess. This is not hot theory. Okay, so White is trying to open lines with f4, but this is a double-edged move because it weakens these pawns here, as we'll see. Carlsen goes queenside, and now c5. Okay, so again, it's coming back to the big theme in this game, which is opening up the diagonal for this bishop, and if Black can do that, then he could stand well. And now, here already, this is a highly complex position, so many different variations possible and play in so many different ways. I mean, for example, you could take and play knight f3, and if knight c6, then you've already opened the h file. Okay, black's pieces don't look bad here, but maybe g4 or something like this. I mean, this is possible. But Magnus chose d5, also very interesting. And the move that I desperately wanted to play in this position was b5, to break open the position for the bishop's open lines on the queen side. But this is a mistake, because white can take and play bishop f3 and suddenly get d5 under control. So I think Giri played correctly. He played e5. This seems right. So in that way, white doesn't have a square for the knight, and black still can open the diagonal. Again, many moves possible in this position. Magnus chose rook h5. Threat simply to capture on g5 and open lines. Giri exchanged, opening up the diagonal. And now, for example, I think this would be very risky indeed, because white would take on g5. So instead he took, and now you can see that the king is a little bit exposed, and well, there are threats to play bishop d3 and take here. So black desperately needs to bring his pieces over. So knight d7 is a must in this position. And now if rook takes f5, there are so many complex variations. Then we can play knight f6. And in fact, I mean, this is actually possible. This would transpose. Magnus did not take on f5. He chose to retreat the rook, and I was amazed that he did this. We were looking at rook takes f5, an exchange sacrifice actually suggested by one of my chess-based colleagues, Oliver Rey, suggested this sacrifice, and I thought this was a good shot. To put the bishop on e6, peon dormido. That's a great name, peon dormido. Daniel, have you ever played like this? I have in the past actually played the Smyslov system with white, and played similar kinds of positions actually, where you have to go crazy on the king side. Anyway, at first I thought this offered white really excellent compensation, putting the bishop on e6, maybe swinging the knight over. But it turns out, when I looked at this later, I think knight h5 is a good move. So after check, and f5 still looks very promising indeed for white, then black plays the knight into g3. Yes, Bioman88 is giving us the translation of peon dormido. I understood. Okay, I think knight g3 is a good move, and somehow this just gives black enough control. If white had time, for example, to start pushing and play knight f3, then I mean the attack would be just crushing. But I think knight g3 is very good. So, for example, queen d3, and now queen g5, and I think black is alright in this position. So, well, you're threatening to take the pawn, and if knight here, now queen here, and white can't get enough control. But it's very close indeed. I think probably it's roughly equal. But okay, Rook h1 was played. Let's crack on. Lots to get through. So knight g4, and I felt that black was actually doing pretty well here, because we've got a situation where the king side seems to have stabilized, and this bishop is raking down the long diagonal, a laser beam cutting through white's queen side, and this looks so attractive to me. Rubin says rook h1 is the move which Fritz likes the most. Okay, interesting. Do you think it's preparation? Absolutely not preparation. I think this was, I repeat, the Smyslov system is not a main line. This was a spur of the moment decision, I would say, the night before Carlsen decided to play this. This is not, you know, you don't study the Smyslov system. You'd go crazy, because it's very difficult to prove an advantage. The Smyslov system is just an interesting system, but it's not critical for black. Right, sorry, getting back to the game. Knight g4. Yeah, so as I said, my feeling is that black is doing well. But it's interesting, because if black just continues to develop, and at first I thought, well, this should be fine for black. In fact, it's not so simple. So for example, here, and if the rook comes across, okay, this one comes across, and the black's problem is that white is threatening to take here and take on f5. So it's not possible to control the e-file. This is highly complex. But yeah, and if given time, white can improve his position with moves like g3, knight h4, and target the f5 pawn. So because of that, Giri didn't play this normal developing move, but played queen d4 instead. And now, very interesting move, knight a4. So basically ignoring the kind of threats here and to f4, but trying to disrupt black's position on the queen side. Knight e3 was played. Black bags an exchange. If queen b3, then I think b5 gives good play, and now rook b8. But this was never Carlsen's intention. He sacrificed the exchange and played the knight to b6. So very nice positional compensation. You have in your sights the bishop on c8, but you're also preventing the bishop from moving to d7. But black's queen is active, and it's very double-edged indeed. So rook f1. And now so many strange tactics here. Carlsen just played king b8. ChessWiz says, I thought this was desperate play from Carlsen. Well, not so desperate. But look what happens if knight takes c8. It's possible to play like this. It's possible that this is actually the best continuation from Carlsen. And although he's the exchange down, he has excellent compensation. For example, here and f5. I'm not sure he's better. You know, maybe it's better to play rook bd8. But no, I don't think this was desperation. I think this is just complex play. What's Mr. Tambourine Man? Desperation is Verzweiflung auf Deutsch. So King B1 was played by Carlsen, perhaps not the best. And after, well, if perhaps Giri should have played Queen E1 here, and instead of playing the endgame, come back to G3. But okay, this is very, very hard to see. Very complex indeed. I wouldn't. I mean, I've been analysing this for an hour or so, and not this position, but it's such a complex game. It's difficult to see everything. Maybe this was better, but who knows? I wouldn't like to say for certain. Let me crack on with the game. This is what happened, and now Carlsen chose to take on C8. So bishop takes F5. So good compensation for white. If you put the bishop on E6 and you can get in G4, G5, then white could be crushing black here. So I think Giri made a very good practical decision just to give back the exchange. And now I thought actually Giri might, with his bishop, have the advantage, but okay, again the position sort of swung back and forth. Okay, if white isn't careful, he could stand worse. Rook and bishop are often stronger than rook and knight, but rook e2 was a good move here, because in the endgame after rook takes, well, it's very close, but white could be better in this position. Maybe this is a draw as well. If the knight comes to d5, white is winning. But this might be a draw. But okay, it's a king and pawn ending, and well, this needs calculation. In any case, Giri didn't have much time to calculate. So here we go. Knight d3, b5, good move. You've got to stir things up. If white gets control here, he could be better. If this knight somehow magically arrives on d5 or g4 and knight comes to f5, could be dangerous. Very good move, rook d8. If you allow white to get control with knight e4, then this could be extremely dangerous. The point is that he liquidates with d5, and lots of pawns get traded. Okay, I don't want to go too much into this. And here, well, it's going to be a draw. Okay, Carlsen tried one last attempt here to win, but well, all the pawns are coming off. I'll just go to the very end and we can see how it finished. And in this position, white can't break free, and again a king and pawn ending was reached, and this one was a draw. Good stuff. I thought that was a fantastic game, so exciting, and both players playing for the win, really going for it. Nimips has a question. Daniel, do you think in this game were there any mistakes like h4 in the Gelfand game? It's really hard to say. There certainly weren't any huge blunders. It was just a very interesting game with an interesting battle of ideas, but there were certainly no blunders. King Kenny asks, Danny, how good do you think Giri is, and how good do you think he'll become? Well, I mean, I know as much as everyone else, we can't predict the future, but if at his age he's able to mix it with the best players in the world, then the future must be pretty bright. At the moment, if I look at the cross table, you can see that Giri after today's game has 2.5 out of 5. he's doing really well. Wraithcliff is asking, why did they play until the Bear Kings? Why not? You know, you just keep going. It's nothing to do with their relations. It's just, why not? It's called a bit of fun. Okay, listen, I'm going to wrap up today. Let me just take you through the other results. We had Nakamura beat Navarra, actually in a very interesting game. I'm sorry we don't have time to look through it. I'm going to cut things short today, if you don't mind. If we look at the cross table, Carlsen and Aronian still lead on 3.5 points. Caruana and Radyabov are just behind on 3, and Ivanchuk has 3 as well. Okay folks, I'm going to leave it there. It's been a long day, but some fantastic games. I'll see you later on for more live commentary. Don't forget, they start at 1500 hours on the server every day, every playing day, and roundup shows every day at 8 PM server time. Okay folks, thanks for joining me. See you later. Bye.